Guilty by Association, a Safe Haven Orphanage Mystery. An audio series by Patricia Asedegbega. Episode 3.
Are you sure you got it right? Because it smells of apple juice to me.
The elderly woman sniffed her hand once more, and Elizabeth frowned and sprayed it on hers. Yes, the customer was right. It definitely smelt of apple juice. It had been hard to get the spray to work, and when it finally had, it did have that fruity smell that the lady was talking about. Not a woody one, with hints of vanilla extract, as Elizabeth had assured the fragrance would.
I'm sorry, would you like to try something else?
The other one is a customer's favourite. It's a blend of various scents. It has fresh citrus notes, Elizabeth said quickly, trying to remember what the many notes that she had been given had said, and hoping it smelled fresh, as she had not previously tried the tester on herself.
This I do like. I have some more shopping to do in the mall. Let me give it some thought, the woman replied. Of course. Would you like me to spray some more on you?
The woman nodded, and Elizabeth made sure every bit of the customer was covered in the lovely citric smell. Picking up the bottle, she walked towards Bosse, who was standing behind the cash register speaking on her phone. She waited for her to finish with the call, receiving an impatient look from her, before finally being able to get her supervisor's attention. Elizabeth showed her the bottle.
This tester doesn't have the scent it should. It smells a lot like apple juice.
Bosse took it from her, and after a few attempts was able to get some on her wrist and smell it. Frowning, she opened the bottle and tasted it.
This is apple juice,
Bosse exclaimed, walking towards the perfume sector, basket in hand, as she put in all the testers and went into the office, from which she did not emerge for a while, giving Elizabeth, with the help of Eloise, the opportunity to practice using the cash register with 3 customers.
You take care of that lady. I need to go and make a phone call. Cover for me if Bosse asks.
Without giving her an opportunity to reply, Eloise dashed out. Elizabeth turned around, smile on her face, to speak to the lady in the makeup section. It was no wonder sales were down. In the few days she had been working there, Eloise, nice as she was, showed a complete lack of interest in her work, and Bosse did not leave the counter. All she wanted to do was attend to paying customers and not be bothered with browsing ones. There was more order in the other shift. The half an hour they spent together, she noticed that the other 2 girls did not leave any customer unattended and did their best to offer alternatives. If there was one thing that had become crystal clear to her, it was that the other 2 employees in her shift, for some reason, were not pulling their weight. But she was going to do her best. Hopefully, Mrs. Aliou would notice who was worth keeping and who was not the problem.
I'm back. I hope there haven't been any issues. Did Bosse say anything? Where is she?
Eloise suddenly materialised by her side.
In the office. She still hasn't come out. Eloise, if you get something extra at the end of the month for sales, why don't you make more of an effort? You could be selling more, Elizabeth asked her colleague. Ah, little one, you're so innocent. Let me explain the ways of the world to you.
The girl put an arm around her and adopted a look of wisdom that reminded Elizabeth of 1 or 2 of her younger brothers when they thought they could get away with being clever.
When I started working here, I was very enthusiastic, giving it my all. Then Ruth and I were in the same shift with Emily, and the ambience was very different. Emily is strict but fair. Suddenly it all changed.
Something happened between Adenike and Bosse. Don't ask me what, because all I know is that Adenike went into my aunt's office, and a day later, I was transferred to this shift. You know, we write down all our sales. I found out 3 weeks ago that Bosse alters the report she submits. Yes, you heard me right. I went into the office to restock, and I saw the printed report on the table. Of course, I had to look.
To my shock, the amount next to my name was much less than I had calculated, and I was keeping count, especially because I had made a big sale to a company. Someone from there had come in and had bought 10 box sets of creams. I remembered the operation perfectly. We had only had 4 in stock, and we had to order the rest. Apparently, they were having a big corporate event, and they were meant to be gifts for their clients. Well, you know me, I don't let things slide. I went up to Bosse, list in hand, and she denied to my face. She said that I had not been pulling my weight and that she had done the final sale of those products. All she did at the end was ask the customer for her credit card. I did all the work. I spent almost 40 minutes advising and looking at options before we arrived at the perfect gift. I was livid, and from then on, I decided to do the bare minimum. Bosse thinks I'll be fired, but she has no idea what I have planned for her. A chuckle was let out with the final words Eloise uttered. I get that it can be annoying, but you shouldn't let her get at you. Or worse still, lower your work standards just to get back at her. It means that you are causing your aunt to lose money, and that affects her business. Whatever you were planning might backfire. Then it will be revealed just how little you've worked, and you might be the one to get the sack. Don't get overconfident. People like Bosse always fall like a cat on their feet. Honestly, I'm trying to work as hard as possible so I can get paid extra too, and with your attitude, you are also playing with my job post. The other girl looked at her, frowning for a moment. Elizabeth, hoping she had not been too honest and made an enemy of her, but it did worry her that the actions of others could potentially affect her. She had a carefully mapped plan for her future, and she did not want to wait too long before starting. That I don't want to do, Eloise replied. Put you at a disadvantage, I mean. I know that you're from the nearby orphanage, yes? Don't look surprised. Bosse mentioned it to us just before you started working here. I promised to bring Bosse down on my own. It won't affect... Eloise, Elizabeth. The rest of the sentence was lost as they both hurried into the office. On the desk were all the testers. Bosse looked at them. The look on her face could not in any way be described as a happy one. Since you came here, things have been happening. I can no longer pass them off as coincidences. Of the 20 testers, 7 of them either contain only water or juice. Bosse was staring at Elizabeth, whose mouth was wide open in shock. What was she being accused of? I was the one who brought that tester to you because it smelt funny. I have no idea what happened to them, but whatever you were accusing me of, I'm innocent. The newest salesgirl defended herself. Oh, you think I don't know that there's a black market for luxury goods and that people will still pay good money for a tester? Bosse looked at Elizabeth in an accusatory manner. Or that you and your family are in dire need of money. I personally replaced some of these testers at the beginning of this week, as there are some customers who just come in daily with no intention of buying, just of generously spraying themselves. But this is totally different. The products have been replaced. Hang on, Bosse. Why are you accusing Elizabeth? We aren't the only ones working here. There are 3 other people that you seem to have automatically crossed off your list of suspects. And don't forget a marker, Eloise said. The cleaning lady? Oh, so you think that in between mopping and sweeping she had time to open the testers, pour out the contents and substitute with water and juice? A woman who mixes present tense and past tense when speaking? The supervisor looked at Eloise with incredulity. And? I'm not accusing her, but I'm just pointing out that there are more suspects aside from the girl from the orphanage, even you. You stay back to close the store. Why should we take you off our list? Eloise asked. I hear customers in the shop. Let's see to them, Eloise. Elizabeth dragged her by the arm because the look Bosse had shot at Eloise upon hearing her words had made her fear that she was about to receive some form of physical retaliation, and something told her that Eloise would not take it quietly.
The next day, Elizabeth went in half an hour before she needed to. The events of the previous evening had left her feeling worried, especially after taking in the ease with which Bosse had hung the guilty sign on her. The toothpaste could be an error from the manufacturer, but the perfume testers were a deliberate attempt. There was no doubt in her mind. Someone was pinching stuff from the store. Adenike and Ruth were attending to customers, and so she went over to Emily to see if something needed to be done. "Oh, Elizabeth, you're early. Is there a reason for that? I hope you know that coming in early doesn't mean leaving early. We need all hands on deck." Emily frowned at her. "Yes, I do. I just came in earlier." "Should I stock up?" she asked. "No, I'll do that in a bit. From now on, Bosse and I will be taking care of that aspect of things," Emily said. "Well, since you're here, you might as well make yourself useful. It's been a very busy morning. Go over and see if that lady needs help. Not the one in the red skirt. She only comes in to use the testers and has never bought anything." Elizabeth nodded as she glanced at the woman in question, who had the perfume tester in her hand and was generously spraying herself with it, hair included. The woman put it down and then walked right out of the shop as Elizabeth marvelled that someone who was so well dressed did that often enough to be noticed by the staff. "Good morning, madam. Do you need any help?" she asked the young woman, who was looking at some lipsticks. "I'm just browsing, really. Looking for ideas. I'm getting married in a month, and I want to give my 6 bridesmaids a gift. They've been so helpful. I just can't make up my mind. I was just in the jewellery shop and was shown some lovely earrings and a bracelet. I passed by this shop and walked in. Just not sure." The woman's voice trailed off as Elizabeth looked around her quickly, looking for ideas to present to the customer. "I think the days before the wedding are going to be quite hectic. Maybe we can put together a few examples of care packs that you can gift them with. We have some new facial masks that just came in that can be included in a relaxing bath set. Or perhaps we can do a personalised makeup pack. If you show me photographs of each lady, I can get something ready for you, respecting your budget, and you can finish each set with a note of gratitude." The bride-to-be thought for a moment, and then they both walked over to the skincare section. She then told Elizabeth how much she wanted to spend, and the young girl quickly got working. 15 minutes later, the woman was looking at 6 very different gift packs. Wow! And now I'm confused about what to get from these. Julia would love the makeup, but Ada is cream crazy. Her bathroom looks like a shop. Why don't you get something different for each person? Elizabeth suggested. There's no rule that they have to all have the same thing, and they can swap items if they like. Elizabeth, do you need any help? Adenike had suddenly materialised by her side. It was evident that she had seen that it had the potential to be a good sale, and if she could take over, then it would be put against her name. And even though she wasn't yet being paid any percentage of the sales, Elizabeth wanted Mrs. Aliou to get an accurate monthly report of her work. "No, we are fine, thank you. This young lady is attending very well to me." The customer smiled and continued asking questions as the newcomer left. "I know how this works." The customer winked at her as soon as Adenike was out of earshot. Elizabeth smiled shyly in response, sure that something would be said to her at some point, but she had not done anything wrong. Nobody was advising the woman before she had taken over. "You know, you're right. I'm going to give each girl something different. So there will be 6 of these with the same budget, and then I want something bigger for my mother and my mother-in-law. My mother, because she has worked a lot, and my mother-in-law, simply to keep her happy. I know she'll look at what everyone is given, so her gift must be ostentatious." She laughed, giving a glimpse of what that relationship was like. A shift change was done, and Elizabeth continued working, following the instructions of the customer. Reaching out for a cream to complete the pack of one of the bridesmaids, she noticed that it weighed very little. So she excused herself and walked up to Bosse, who had arrived and was working at the till. "What do you need?" Startled, she turned around. Mrs. Aliou was standing behind her. Elizabeth had not expected to see her. She looked over at Bosse nervously, not sure how to proceed, but her boss was staring at her, expecting an answer.
"Good afternoon, Ma. I'm getting a pack for a customer ready, and it feels like there is nothing in this box."
The woman took it from her and tore off the plastic wrapping. Opening the box, she saw that it was indeed empty.
"Take out another one for her. Is all that for the same customer?"
she asked, looking at the pile being assembled, and Elizabeth nodded.
"Before she leaves, come and see me in the office. I have some miniature gifts that I'd like to give her,"
Mrs. Aliou said, and Elizabeth nodded again. 20 minutes later, leaving the customer paying for her purchase at the till, Elizabeth knocked at the door and went into the office. Mrs. Aliou was on her phone. She waited for her to conclude her call.
"Look in those boxes at the end of the room. I kept some gifts for good customers that I got directly from the manufacturers. The sealed boxes, I mean. There are some miniature hand creams and perfume bottles. Take one of each and put them in the small gift bags, one for each pack. Then the customer should get one eye contour cream and a day cream as well."
Elizabeth proceeded to do what her boss had asked. The 4 boxes, though sealed, were in quite a disarray, and she had to search to find each item.
"I can't find any eye contours or moisturising creams,"
Elizabeth said to her boss, who walked up to where the salesgirl was.
"Why is it all so scattered? Each item is in a box. Now it is all mixed up. What did you do?"
"Nothing, Ma. They were like this when I opened them. But I have looked in all, and I can't find those creams." The woman rummaged, and then walked back to a cupboard. Taking out a key, she opened it and handed over a few jars to Elizabeth.
"Complete them with these, and—"
Elizabeth waited as the woman stood still looking at the cupboard.
"Tell Bossy to leave whatever she is doing and come here immediately,"
Mrs. Aliou ordered, almost shouting. Elizabeth rushed out to do as she was asked. Eloise took over from the till, and after telling the customer to wait a moment, as she had some gifts for her, Elizabeth knocked back on the door to get the things.
"What do you mean you don't know?"
Mrs. Aliou shouted, visibly infuriated.
"Are there a million people walking in and out of this room? I had 2 bottles of perfumes, each worth more than 250,000 naira, and from what I have counted so far, a few jars of cream are also missing. They were here last week when I looked. Where are they now?"
Elizabeth rushed out with the gift bags, not wanting to remain in the room, before the attention was turned on the new girl.
"Trouble is brewing. Some items are missing from the office,"
she whispered to Eloise, who was giving the customer her receipt.
"These are for you, courtesy of Mrs. Aliou, the owner of this store. Thank you so much for patronising us."
Elizabeth handed them over to the customer and helped the woman take her bags to her car, a feeling of trepidation in the pit of her stomach. Now that everything was out in the open, what would their boss do?
"I thought she was going to lose it," Eloise said. "She even went as far as ordering that the metal roller shutter be down for those few minutes, and that's huge. My aunt is all about the money. For a moment, it felt like she was going to fire us all on the spot."
They were walking towards the exit after a very emotional evening in which there had been some shouting and threats had been made, especially after the other incidents had been brought to light. The only people that could be seen in the hall of the shopping mall were workers from other establishments that were like them, making their way home.
"Eloise, what happened in your shop today? I was on one of my rounds and I saw the shutter down,"
a plump, middle-aged man asked. And Elizabeth looked at him, not recognising him at first, until it dawned on her from the uniform he was wearing that Obi was finally awake and not leaning or sitting on anything.
"We've had some things go missing from the shop and my boss found out. So a quick search was done and explanations were demanded from us,"
Eloise summarised.
"Really? A mystery, and you didn't think to involve the very able Obi and Jimmy, the 2 greatest detectives this country has ever seen. You do know that you have before you 2 very privileged minds, right? Nothing escapes us."
The young man had suddenly appeared, and with a twinkle in his eye leaned on his companion, who scowled, sensing an insult somewhere, but not sure where. Elizabeth laughed at the scene. "Very well, solved the case then. 6 salesgirls, 1 cleaning lady, and a whole lot of customers. Which one is guilty? Don't forget that one of the suspects is your darling Adenike. Do you still want to investigate?" Eloise asked jokingly. "Ah, in that case I'm definitely investigating," Jimmy exclaimed. "Just to see her taken out of here in handcuffs. That would be the best day ever. Especially after the way she looked at me after coming down from a red car the other day. She told the man to stop there on purpose, making sure I saw him. No, Obby, we must investigate. We need to keep our eyes open. It's personal now." Jimmy's face lit up at the thought of apprehending Adenike, and Obby's countenance reflected a lack of interest in the subject, especially as the task would require actual work being done. The 2 girls walked out. Chidi was supposed to pick her up that day, but he had not arrived yet. "Is there anything going on between Adenike and Jimmy?" Elizabeth asked. "Well, they met at a club months ago at a birthday party and seemed to hit it off. Spoke a bit on the phone, and I think even went out on one date. A bit later, Adenike started working here, and to her shock, who did she see dressed up and working in security? Of course, she made him know in no uncertain terms that she would never ever stoop as low as to date a security guard. Her loss, really. There are a number of girls working here that couldn't care less how Jimmy earns a living. They are just glad that he does. Oh, that's your brother. I'll be off now to get my bus." Chidi exchanged a greeting with Eloise, and the girl left. They walked home in silence as Elizabeth tried to suppress the feeling of disappointment that had inundated her when she had found out that there had been something between Jimmy and Adenike, someone that she could not compete with. But then Jimmy was older than her, and he had not shown any interest in Elizabeth either. Yet she could not help but smile when she walked through those doors daily, and Jimmy was standing there. "Any more incidents at work?" Chidi asked, taking her out of her thoughts. "Well, today the boss found out that some of the stuff from a cupboard in her office was missing, and it all came out in the open. The testers that had been tampered with, the missing bottles of perfume. Mrs. Aliou said that she had a lot on her plate at the moment, but that at the end of the month she would be making a decision. It's evident that someone working there is responsible, especially after what happened today, taking something from a cupboard in an office. That's very specific," Chidi observed. "Keep your eyes and ears open. You might find out something that could at least keep you out of trouble. You know that some people will look for an easy target to blame." They walked the rest of the way home back in silence as Elizabeth pondered Chidi's words. He was right, she had to be careful. She did suspect that whoever was responsible would not stop, not if that person was convinced that she had gotten away with it. "I have to search your bag." Elizabeth looked up, surprised, at first not believing that she was the one being spoken to, but she was. Obi was looking at her. "Orders from your boss. I have to search when you go in and when you leave." Elizabeth handed her bag over. It did not take him long to go through its content. He nodded at her, and she left with a burning sensation on her face, hoping nobody had seen her and assumed that she was dishonest. At least she was spared the embarrassment of it having been Obi and not Jimmy. "Were you searched too?" Ruth asked her once she'd gotten inside the store, and Elizabeth nodded. "It was so embarrassing. I came in this morning and was talking with the girls from the shoe shop in the corner when I was stopped by one of the security men. I was in shock, and then Adenike told me what had happened the previous evening. She heard it from Emily." "Was Mrs. Aliou very angry?" "Livid. I thought she was going to pop a vein. It just seems that everything happens in our shift. I think she's going to fire someone soon," Elizabeth said. There was a customer browsing around, but she wanted to find out more from Ruth, and so did not go to her. "True, you ladies seem to have bad luck. I suspect Onome left for something similar, and she was also in your shift. The boss made it clear that she would not be tolerating dishonesty. I can't say for sure what happened, as it was all hush-hush, but I think Onome resigned before they found out she was stealing. I agree with you. Someone will be fired at the end of this month, Ruth said as she nodded in the direction of the customer and went off. Elizabeth looked around. Adenike was not in sight, and Emily was at the counter. There was a small line of people waiting to pay. She walked around the shelves, picking up a few boxes from time to time, checking to make sure there was something inside them. The same woman who had come in the day before was generously spraying herself with perfume. Elizabeth walked up to her. "Good afternoon, can I help you?" Elizabeth asked. "Oh no, I'm just trying this on, to see how it smells on me after a few hours. Do let me know if I can be of help." Elizabeth smiled at her and took a step back, thinking that if she had been visiting the store for a while, she had probably stolen a bottle worth of perfume.
"Excuse me, can you recommend a cream for pimples? My son is at that stage."
Elizabeth turned her attention to the woman that was speaking to her, her eyes darting to the 3 other workers from time to time, not wanting to let anyone out of her sight, especially as they would leave soon. She also needed to find out about their personal lives and Onome, the girl that had been mentioned. If the thefts were still going on, then the girl had probably been framed. Eloise came in as usual, a minute before she was supposed to clock in. There was always a reason for her being late, so one had to be grateful when she came in a minute before, as it saved witnessing the argument that would follow between Bosse and Eloise. "What happened to Onome? I heard that she left in very strange circumstances," Elizabeth finally managed to ask in a quiet moment of what had, till that point, been a very busy evening. "Oh, I worked with her for about 2 weeks," Eloise said. "She was a quiet girl. Anyway, one day she signed a delivery and went into the office to arrange it. The next day, Emily said 3 creams were missing from the box, and I sensed that she was accusing Onome. I remember wondering if it had been her, especially when I saw her tear up when she was leaving. She didn't cry or say anything to me, she just nodded, and I noticed that her eyes were red. I didn't hear what was said as Emily, Bosse and herself went into my aunt's office. Watch your back. Strange things happen here, and those 2 arrange it all so someone else gets the blame." They both went their separate ways after that, as there were people in the shop. Elizabeth started feeling really worried at that point. If it had been so easy to get rid of Onome, would she stand a chance? To stay up to date with Patricia Asedegbega's work, make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel by clicking on the subscribe button and hit the bell for notifications.